Hello, Madison. I hope you're doing well. We're going to go over your 2D and 3D analysis, and I'm going to be looking for what we call hitting inhibitors. These inhibitors can impact your power, contact, and efficiency. First thing to look for is any type of sway. And so what we do is we take your negative move, and we just want to make for sure that that knee doesn't cross that line. Let me get you at 90. Make sure little negative movement is good, meaning movement away from the pitcher. But we don't want that knee to go across that line. It's okay if a little bit of the waist goes across, but we don't want the knee. Next thing we look for is what we refer to as loss of posture. So as you get into your negative move, we want you in an attacking position to the ball and the pitcher. So what we do is start your negative move. What I'm going to do is draw a line for your eye and your waistline. Let's see, am I getting a little bit of a slight backwards tilt? Going to get you to toe touch. You can see that line is, again, tilted backwards. And then once we get to the heel plant, this is actually when we want you going back there. So ideally the line we want to see is, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that way. And as you can see, your upper body is tilted back. Even though you have a good negative move, we'll need to look at just your posture there. In real time, it looks good. When we do the 2D, you may be slightly behind. So here we definitely want the eye in front of the waistline, kind of toe touch. Fairly similar, but definitely not going back. The heel plant, that's when it goes back. All right. So we'll say loss of posture there. Other thing we look for is dead hands. So we take that negative move to the toe touch position. So negative move to toe touch. And what we're doing, so negative move here, we're measuring distance between your nose and mid substance of your hands. We have you go to toe touch, which we'll call here. And then we draw a line again to see if there's been any increase in the distance. And there really hasn't been. Even though the line shifts, it's roughly about the same. Sorry, I drew that last one a little short there. So if we do nose to mid hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So some batters will have the bat a little bit closer to their neck. And then on the negative move, and then as they take that step forward, they'll extend the arms. And the reason that is important because it does create elastic stretch. Even though the arm's already extended, it kind of neutralizes it. And so there's no power generation, energy generation. And so by actually having it close to you, then stepping and then increasing, you generate power, which you then transfer on the forward movement. So we would say you do have dead hands on this one. The other thing we look for is loss of base. And so we take it to the loss of base position pretty much at toe touch. And what are we going to call your toe touch? You got a little shift there. So we'll say here because your next movement is heel plant. So toe touch, what we're looking at is your back heel up and where's your front knee pointing? So if I can see the front of your knee on here, that means there's a loss of base. When you go to heel plant, you will, let's see, even there, your knee is still showing and it doesn't, probably right there is where we want you at toe touch. I would say even here, we'll take it toe touch. But you see it takes you 1, 2 frames before you get into that position, all right? And part of that is, yes, you do get into the position that we want you in, but just not at the timing that we would like, and that can throw off your efficiency. And so there we do see a loss of base. Other thing we look for is what we refer to as hanging back. So we look at your negative move there, And I'm gonna draw a line. So on the outside of your foot, all right? And so when you go for your swing, to show that you have proper weight shift, we don't want your heel crossing that line at all right? And so as we go forward, good weight shift, and then bam, foot straight up and down. So that's a good sign. So no signs of hanging back. The other thing we look for is how is that elbow doing in relationship to your hip? We want to make sure that it's not getting stuck there and it's passing through. And from what I can tell, you're doing pretty good. It's a little tricky with your shirt, but is that elbow getting in front of the hip and not getting stuck on the hip? Let me see, 1, 2. It's a little tough call. 1, 2, usually if it's 3, I kind of call it. I'm gonna say your elbow's getting stuck. Mr. Paws there was throwing me off a little bit. Really, it's kind of the black shirt, but I don't think I think your elbow is following with your hip. And we want that elbow to accelerate past the hip. So I'm gonna say that I am seeing what we call a gate swing. And that means you're not getting full separation of your body. And actually, we can verify this when we do the 3D piece. Excuse me. Next thing we look for is dumping the barrel. And so when you get to that toe touch position, are the hands behind the bat? And so there's toe touch. Hands are behind the bat for this one, the pitcher. So you're good from that standpoint. We also look for push. So we want to make sure your hands are in nice alignment here with the elbow. Other thing we want to look for is flying elbow at toe touch. Your elbow is inside the hands. So good positioning there. Next thing we look for is drifting. We take it from the heel plant position. And then we draw a line straight up and down there, almost straight up and down. And we want to make sure you rotate around that line there, which is good. All right. So good weight shift there. Next, I'm going to take you to a different view. And we're going to look from the rear view. And I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take you to negative moves, start of the positive move. Then what I'm going to do is draw a line straight up and down. And what we want you to not do is create space between that line and your glutes as you go through the swing. And so we go here, we're going forward. There's a little bit of loss or a lot of loss of space there. And what that means is you're closing the gap between your body and the ball. And so you create a smaller space for your hands to follow. All right, so you do come off of that. And some of that might be related to camera angle. But I think even if I adjusted the camera, you do have some tucking in of the hips right in that area. And that correlates with your pelvic tilt, where you had to tuck in and out. And you did have a little shaking back. So it goes back to core strength, essentially, and particularly within your pelvis region. So I am going to say there is a loss of space. There is no casting of the hand, so you want that lead hand inside the elbow at all times, and you're doing good. But that loss of space, you know, if someone pitched you inside, they could easily jam you because your body's moving forward. Or I should say they could potentially jam you because your body's moving forward. So, all right, so loss of space there. Now I'm going to switch over to the 3D analysis piece. And then so here, we're going to look at what we refer to as your X factor. And so how much separation do you get with the upper body and the lower body? All right, and so I have to see if I can get it accurate because you're a little bit out of the screen. So right here, roughly 13, and at the most, yeah, 30. All right. Do some quick math here, and so that's an X factor of 27. And so ideally we want you in 25 to 35 range. So doing well with during the swing, getting some separation between your shoulders and your hips. And really it's kind of right here where you get the greatest separation. All right, so that means you're generating some power. The challenge is we're going to go up to this top left graph. And what we're looking at here is how you're sequencing. So the orange is your pelvis, the green is your trunk or your shoulder, and then the red is your lead arm, excuse me. And so when you go through the swing, we want you peaking with your hips, so the orange. So you're actually leading with your hips, but what's happening is looks like your arms are getting out in front of your thorax, which actually doesn't peak till later. So ideally you want orange to peak, which is the pelvis, and then that transfers the power to the trunk, which is the green, and then it transfers the power to your arms and the back. So what's happening is, yeah, you're peaking properly with the hips, but then your arms take over, and then your thorax, your shoulder kind of follows after that. And so lack of transfer and energy is contributing to a loss of power. And I remember when we were discussing your technique and your arching back, and you say, you know, you're doing it to generate power. Well, part of that, so pretty much here, you're done with your power transfer. So anything after that is just kind of release of energy. I won't necessarily say wasted energy, but because your thorax is out of sync, that's actually your loss of power in your swing. And so, because again, here, your thorax is peaking and it's actually after you hit the ball. And so we want the hips, which you have a good hip turn, but then really what it's saying is your thorax is just kind of following along with your hips. Your bat's getting out in front, it's peaking there, and then afterwards, your thorax and shoulders are peaking. So if we can get you into sequence, it'd be interesting to see if you no longer need to arch at the end, because you are trying to generate power, but it's part of your power generation is because you're out of sequence. If that makes sense, all right? And so we'll work on those things with the corrective exercises, hip movement, thoracic movement. I believe your shoulders were a little tight, so that could be another reason why you're compensating. And actually that makes sense, because if your shoulders are tight, you don't have that full mobility within the shoulders, so you're using your hips as well as your arms to generate that power. And in your particular case, you're using also your back muscles there. And so we'll work on improving your mobility flexibility in those areas will get your sequencing better, and then I think you'll get the power that you want by addressing those things. All right, appreciate you. We'll be talking some more. Take care.